Wednesday, Governor J.B. Pritzker delivers his seventh State of the State address in the midst of a budget deficit of $3 billion.
WIFR reporter Alyssa Kelly listens in on the address to learn how the state plans to become focused on making life more affordable for everyday Illinoisans.
Governor J.B. Pritzker says a growing economy will help a tough budget year. Throughout the address, the governor focuses on lowering health care costs, housing affordability, education funding, and unfair pricing on prescription drugs. Mixed reactions fill the Illinois Capitol Tuesday afternoon as Governor J.B. Pritzker speaks on the 2025 budget proposal.
I'm proud to say that this year's budget proposal is balanced and responsible.
Pritzker targeted Republican criticism that the budget will pull more money from taxpayers' pockets. He pointed to what he believes are key cost-saving measures, like finding efficiencies in daily operations and eliminating unnecessary hiring. He adds that this budget gets rid of boards and commissions that aren't doing anything and overhauls state purchases to save taxpayers money.
At the top of the list, we need to lower health care costs. Patients, healthcare providers, and independent pharmacists will all tell you that pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, are driving up prices.
Pritzker introduces the Prescription Drug Affordability Act to reduce drug costs for Illinois patients and protect independent pharmacists. Then he focuses on the next challenge, housing.
Illinois' housing inventory decreased more than the national average. That's got to change.
Last year, Pritzker appointed a director of housing solutions who proposed a slate of reforms. This year, the General Assembly is asked to put those recommendations to work. Finally, Pritzker looks into education, introducing the Public University Direct Admission Program Act.
It would allow students to know before they apply whether they qualify for admission to any or all of our state's public universities. More kids in Illinois will stay and go to school here, and that's great for our state's families and our economy.
The governor did tell lawmakers he will only sign a balanced budget. The next budget year begins July 1st.
Thank you, Alyssa. Some local lawmakers praise and others are disappointed in Governor J.B. Pritzker's State of the State address.
Yeah, let's start with the Republican Party. 90th Representative John Cabello says the governor spent his address defending sanctuary state policies, while 69th State Representative Joe Sosnowski says Pritzker criticized President Trump on national issues while fueling Nazi accusations. Republicans are also disappointed about Governor Pritzker saying the state will have to make sacrifices to get an affordable budget.
It doesn't do anything to really help improve our jobs climate, which is a big concern as Illinois continues to be a leader in out-migration of both companies and of individuals.
Democrat lawmakers applaud the governor's budget speech. 67th Representative Maurice West says we must continue to take steps to lower costs on groceries and daily essentials. 68th Representative Dave Vella is optimistic that lawmakers can work together to build a smart spending plan that prioritizes local families. Democrats also want the state to keep investing in education.
You know, we changed the school funding formula a couple of years ago to really help those districts that are in financially need, and that includes Rockford and Belvedere. And we, are providing millions of dollars more for these type of school districts. We've done a couple of things that allows them to have more resources to meet their challenges and needs, but it's also offered some property tax relief.